Using div blocks is like laying bricks. Now let's build daily interaction number 26. Hey, what's up everyone? John with WebDev for you, and welcome to the Daily Interaction series, where every weekday we build a new interaction or animation in Webflow. Today we're going to be building a menu item animation on hover. So here when I hover over these menu items, we have kind of this block revealing up, and we have actually two blocks, but they're moving at different speeds. So we have this nice kind of double block effect where the user can hover and have this interesting effect for the menu items. All right, so this is what we will be building today. To view more daily interactions and premium content, visit webdevforyou.com. Also, be sure to subscribe below to receive a notification every time there is a new daily interaction. Okay, so here I have a blank Webflow project, and we'll start with the daily interaction class naming convention. So today is 26, so we'll do D-26 and then the element. So every element on the site will have a D-26 in front of it, and this is for consistency purposes and so that we know we're working with daily interaction number 26. All right, the next thing I'll do is add a section. So first we're going to add all the elements and the menu items, and then we're going to add the interaction to the menu items. So here I'll add an element and I'll add a section. Then I'll give it the class name D-26. D-26 section. I'll give it a height of 100 VH, so it spans the full height of the viewport, and it will be the full width as well. Then I'll scroll down to background. I'll set the background color to black, go up to display setting, set it to flex, then justify center and align center. So first we're going to place the menu in the center, but we can later move it around to place it in a different section of the site. But we'll start off with the menu in the center. So now I'll add an element and I'll add a div block. So here I'll select div block, and this is going to be the menu wrapper. So we're going to place all the link blocks inside of this div block so that we can later move around the entire menu. So here I'll give it the class name D-26 menu wrapper. And for this, I'm going to go to element settings, and for the tag, I'm going to make it a nav. So it defines a set of navigation links such as those in your main site nav. So this is kind of an important step because you do want search engines and you do want the links inside of this menu wrapper to be seen as nav links. So the search engines and and your site knows that it's a nav, that the links inside of it are for a menu. So here I'll select nav, so it has the tag nav. So now I'm going to add some link blocks inside of this menu wrapper, and these are going to be the nav links. So here I'll add an element and I'll select a link block. So I'll select it here, then I'll give it the class name D-26 link block, or I could call it nav link or link block. So here I can link out to a URL, a page section, an email, telephone number, or a file. All right, looks good. And for this, I'm going to set it to a position of relative because we are going to have absolute position divs inside of this link block. And I want those divs to be relative to the link block and not relative to, let's say, the menu wrapper or another parent element. So by setting it to relative, anything inside of it will be relative to it. All right, looks good. The next thing I'm going to do is add the text for the link block. So let's go ahead and add the text. So I'll add an element with the link block selected, and I'll select text. So there we have the text, kind of has this funky blue color with an underline. So to change that, first let's give it a class name. So I'll give it the class name D-26 menu item text. All right, let's go to the navigator and look at the structure of the site. So we have the menu wrapper, we have the link block, and inside the link block is the menu item text. So to remove that underline, the reason it has that underline is because the text is inside of a link block, so Webflow is giving it the link block styling with that blue color and the underline. So here I just want to select link block, go into styles, and under typography, I'm going to say none for the underline. There we don't have an underline, so now I just need to style the text. So I'll select the menu item text, go back into styles, and I'll work with the typography here. So here for the typography, I'll set it to circular bold, give it a color of white, and we'll set the font weight to bold as well. Then I'll double click inside of here, inside of the text, and I'll give it the name home for the first menu item. I'll select it and we'll change the font size. So here I'm going to set it to 44. We're going to make it really large for this first example so we can clearly see it. And I'll give it a line height of 50. So a font size of 44 and a line height of 50 looks good. And I might give it some, or 0, yeah, I won't give it any letter spacing there. All right, and for this text, I'm actually going to set it to relative because I'm going to later place this text in front of other elements. So by setting it to relative, I can ensure that by moving it within the navigator, it'll come to the front. And this will be a bit more clear in a second. All right, so the next thing I want to do is add 2 blocks inside of the link block. So those blocks, yeah, we'll apply color to those blocks and then we'll have them scale. So in this example, we see a blue block and a pink block, and they're just scaling from the bottom to the top. So I want to add those blocks into the link block. So I'll go back into Webflow with the link block selected. I'll add a div block. So I'll add an element, add a div block. And for this, I'll go to style. I'll give it the class name d-26 block-1. And for this, I'll set it to a position of absolute and full. So it fills the entire link block. And notice we didn't give the link block any width or height. So it's inheriting the width and the height from the text. And actually that brings me to another point. First, let's finish with this block here. And then we're actually going to add some padding to the text to make the entire menu item a bit bigger. All right. So that block is filling the entire parent element, which is the link block, because it's set to absolute and full. So the last thing I need to do here is give it a background color. So I'll give it a background color of blue. And there we have the first block. So notice the text is now behind it. So to change that, we'll go into the navigator and we'll just reorder the menu item text. So in the navigator, so I'll click, hold, and drag and bring it below block 1. And there we go. If this wasn't set to relative, if the menu item text wasn't set to relative, it wouldn't work. So if I set it to auto, it's not in front of the other text. So by setting it to relative, we can kind of bring things behind or in front of other elements, either in the navigator or using the z-index property right here in Webflow. But yeah, there we go. The text is in front. And also for the text, I'm going to add some padding. So I'll hold down Shift and I'll give it about 15 pixels of padding so that the entire link block gets larger because it is inheriting the width from its children element. When I make the text larger, or the padding of the text larger, the entire link block expands. And because that blue block is set to absolute and filling the parent element, it also gets larger. All right, so that's the fun of working with like div blocks and all this positioning. You can affect like different elements and children elements and things like that. All right, so we need to add one more block. So I'll select the link block. I'll add a div block. And for this, I'll give it the class name d-26 block-2. And again, I'll set it to a position of absolute and full. Okay, so it fills the entire link block. And then I'll give it a background color of this lighter pink here. All right, so that looks good. Again, I want to bring the text in the navigator. I want to bring it below block 1 and 2. So we have the text, then we have block 2, which is the pink, and block 1 is behind the pink block. So yeah, the blue block is all the way in the back. All right, so there we have our link block. So the next thing I want to do is change the transform origin of the blocks, because if we go to the demo, we notice that these blocks are scaling from the bottom to the top. And this is done because we have the transform origin from where it animates, we have it set to the bottom. So I'll just quickly do that so that when we create the interaction, we're not going back and forth. So here I'll select block 1, go into styles, I'll scroll down to transitions and transforms, and right here where it says transforms, I'll click this gear icon, right here, and here we have the transform origin. So I want this block to animate from the bottom to the top. So the transform origin, I'm going to set it to the bottom. So we have all these dots here to let us select the position of the transform origin, and I want it to be at the bottom, so it animates from the bottom to the top. So I'll select bottom here, the bottom center. Then I'll select block 2, go into styles, and we'll do the same thing, go to transitions and transforms, and for transforms, I'll set the transform origin to the bottom center. Okay, so there we have the transform origin set. Okay, so now we have all the elements we need for the menu item. We have block 1, block 2, and the menu item text. So now I want to copy this 4 more times, so we have 5 menu items. So here I'll close the link block, I'll select it, I'll hold down Command-C to copy, then I'll select the menu wrapper, and we'll paste 4 more times. So here I'll hold down Command-V to paste the link block. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so I can just double click inside of each menu item and rename it to different names here. So I'll say home, about, services, contact, and shop. All right, looks good. The other thing I want to do really quick is I want to add a border. So here in the demo, it does have a border. So I'll just go here and I'll select the menu item text, and I will go to styles, and I will give it a solid border. Here under border, I'll say solid, and we'll make it white. All right, so there we have the border and the menu items. The text is a bit large. We can change that in a second, but now we can add the interaction to this menu. So to do that, because the menu item text is in front, so it's in front of block 1 and block 2, I want the menu item text to be an interaction trigger. So because it's in front, we can hover over it. So when we hover over it, I want block 1 and block 2 to have an animation to it. So here let me collapse all. For the first link block, I'll select it, and I'll open it, and I'll select the menu item text, because that's going to be the interaction trigger. So here I'll select it, I'll go to interactions, and it's going to be an element trigger because we're going to hover over an element. So here I'll select the plus, I'll select mouse hover, and on hover we're going to start an animation. So I'll select this here, and for timed animations I'll click the plus, and we'll add a new timed animation. So here I'll give it the class name D-26 mouse-in. And here I'll select the first block. So I want the blue block to animate first, so to come up first, and then the pink block to come behind it, or to come after it. So initially I don't want either blocks to be visible. So I'm going to select block 1, go into interactions, I'll click the plus next to timed actions, and I'll say scale. And right down here in the scale, it's kind of cut off here at the bottom, but we do want to select the Y, and we want to unconstrain the X and the Y, so the X doesn't change when the Y changes. We just want the Y to change because we're going to have the block scale vertically. So on the Y axis, it's vertical. So we want the blocks to go from a scale of 0 on the Y and then to a scale of 1 on the Y, so it scales vertically. So here I'll select the lock so it unlocks, and then on the Y, I'm going to set it to 0. Okay, so the blue block goes to a scale of 0, and it's transforming from the bottom because we set the transform origin to the bottom for block 1. And then for the timing, I'm going to set it as the initial state. So initially that first block is not visible, and we want to do it for the pink block as well. So here in the navigator, I'll select block 2, go into interactions, add a new timed action, I'll say scale, and I'll unlock it here and set it to 0. Okay, so notice we don't see either block, they're both set to 0. And I'm also going to set it to the initial state, so we don't initially see the blue or the pink block. So now I want both blocks to scale back to 1, which is its original scale, so it's fully visible. So here in the timed action, because we have them both here, I can select block 1, and I'll add a new timed action. I'll say scale, and again, I'll unlock it here, and I'll set it to a scale of 1, so it goes back to its full scale. And for the easing, I'll say ease out expo, and I'll give it a duration of 0.3, so it comes in really fast. And then for the second block, we'll do the same thing. So I'll select it here, and I'll say scale, and I'll unlock it here, set it to a scale of 1. And this time, I'm going to set the duration to 0.6. So it comes in 0.3 seconds after the blue one, and that'll give us kind of that double reveal block for the effect. I'll set it to an easing of ease out expo, and I'll click, hold, and drag to start it with block 1. So they both start at the same time. They just have different speeds, which will give us that. Here, if I go to the demo, it gives us that first blue block appearing and then the pink. All right, yeah, so they both have a scale of 1. The first one has a duration of 0.3, and the second one has a duration of 0.6, and they both start at the same time. So now when I preview, we have the effect there. All right, so I want this effect to occur for all the menu items, not just the first one. So here's the power of where the power of Webflow comes in. So rather than just affecting a specific element, I can affect elements with the same class. So to do that in Webflow, what we do is select the element, and right here where it says effect, rather than affecting the selected element, we can affect a class, so action will affect multiple elements with the same class. So I'll select this, and I'll select that class, and we want to affect only siblings with this class. So action will affect only sibling elements of the interaction trigger. So I'll select this here, and I'll explain this a bit. So why is it a sibling? So if I go into the navigator, it's a sibling because the menu item text is the interaction trigger, so we can see that it is here because it's a green circle with the lightning bolt symbol. And block 1 and block 2 are siblings because they share the same parent element. So all of these elements, including the interaction trigger, are children of the link block, which makes block 1 and block 2 siblings of the interaction trigger here because they have the same parent. All right. So they are siblings, and we want to do the same for block 2. We want to affect a class and only siblings with this class. All right, so now if I preview, still nothing is occurring. And that's because only the first one here has the animation. The reason that it's not applied to all of them, because in the navigator, we can see that only the first link block has the interaction trigger applied to it. If we open the other ones, they're not an interaction trigger. So to change that, we're going to close this here in the interactions, and right here for trigger settings, rather than affecting an element, we're going to affect a class, and any class with the D-26 menu item text will become an interaction trigger, and because we're affecting the siblings of each interaction trigger, we're only going to affect the specific blocks for those specific interaction triggers. So here, by selecting class, if I go back into the navigator, now all the menu item text are an interaction trigger, and we're going to affect the siblings of each interaction trigger. So each animation will occur individually for each link block or menu item. All right, so I know I said a lot of words there. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below or in the forum section for this video. So now when I preview and I hover over, we have the effect occurring for all the menu items. So the last thing we need to do is set the hover out animation. So to do that, we'll go back into the interaction, and on hover out, we'll start an animation, and I'll duplicate the mouse in because it already has a lot of the properties we need. So I'll select the 3 dots, select duplicate, and I'll select D-26 mouse in 2, select it here. Looks good, and I'll rename this to D-26 mouse out. And we don't need initial states for the hover out because we already set those for the hover in. So I can just delete these first two initial states, and all we need to do for the scale is reverse it. So for block 1, and I can't really select it here, so let me do something like that for a second. So because I'm working with a specific resolution, so some of the scale properties are cut off here, but I can kind of see the 1 here. So I'm going to, so here for the scale of 1, I'm going to set it to 0. So it goes back down to a scale of 0. And I'll do the same for block 2. So just for a second, I'm going to say selected element, and rather than a scale of 1, I'll set it to 0. So they both go back down. All right. And I'm going to say change it back to class and only siblings, and yeah, affect a class. So yeah, I changed it back because I needed some kind of real estate here, or screen real estate, because it got cut off. But yeah, we just set the scale back to 0, and that's it. That's all we need to do. And because we copied it from the first hover in interaction, it had the class settings applied. So we're going to affect a class and only siblings with this class. So now I'll preview. When I hover over, we have the animation, and I hover out, and it goes back. All right. And we actually want to do a few other things. We want to change the timing as well. So block 1 will have a duration of 0.6, and block 2 will have a duration of 0.3. I think this will help us. Yeah, that's much better. So we just reverse the duration as well, so that on hover out, the pink block goes down first, and then the blue block. So we can see both blocks a little bit as it's hovering out. So yeah, it's just reversing the timing there. So on hover in, we see a little bit of the blue block, and the pink block comes in, and on hover out, the pink block goes out first, and then the blue block. So we see a little bit of the blue block as well. All right, so yeah, that's basically it. So now I'll just style the menu a bit. So we're done with the interaction. So the menu item text is a bit large, so let me just style that. I'm going to set the text size to maybe like something like that. And we can set the line height to a bit lower. Yeah, maybe something like this. That might look a little better. Yeah, it looks good. And then I can change the position of the menu wrapper. So I'll select the menu wrapper here, and I'll give it the position absolute. And I can set it to the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, and things like that. So I'm going to set it to the top right, and yeah, maybe give it a little bit of padding, maybe something like this, kind of depending on what you're going for the site. But yeah, there we have a menu. We have a little nice menu here in the top right, and looks good. I mean, if you had a specific design, I think this could work really well for your website. And search engines and the code in the site will see this as a nav div, basically. So it's looking at it as a nav bar, or yeah, an element with nav links in it. Because yeah, for the menu wrapper, we set the tag to nav, so it defines a set of navigation links such as those in your main site nav. Okay, so that is it for daily interaction number 26. It's kind of a simple animation, but it looks really nice, and it's fun to interact with. The user can, hover over. It almost looks like music lines in a way. As you hover over each menu item, it's kind of like moving up and down. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, looks good. So that is it for daily interaction number 26, the menu item animation on hover. Here we have it again, and looks good. All right, so to view more daily interactions and premium content, visit webdevforyou.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next daily interaction.